This is Tech Talk Detroit with Brian Spurgeon and Chuck Lobert. Tech Talk Detroit brings you the latest in tech news and Detroit happenings every week.
So Chuck, you're out there, you're meeting with new prospects and out here finding new clients all the time. What are the common things that you're finding businesses are concerned with?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I'd say one of the main topics that we talk about a lot is backup, disaster recovery. You know, people are worried about how do they know that their backups are working? You know, what happens if they're going to go down? How do they know that everything's protected? How long is it going to take them to get up and running? There's a lot of questions that come up when you start talking about that. And unfortunately, a lot of companies, a lot of business owners don't really know the answers to them. So it's one of the things that they worry about. Yeah,
and I think, honestly, backups is probably one of the most important things that a business should absolutely have under control. I think all of the other great stuff that you do, that you provide, all the services that you do, they're completely dependent upon the contingency plan, which is your backup. We see it all the time. We come in to start relationships with clients, and one of the first things we notice is they've never got a backup report. They don't even know if their backups are working. And for me, it's just absolutely crazy. You know, it's the same as driving a brand new vehicle without any kind of insurance on it. Like, you're really taking a risk out there, things that are out of your control. You know, you can be the best driver in the world. You can do everything right in your business. But if you don't have that contingency plan, it's not a matter of if something happens, it's when something happens. What is your plan to get back up on your feet?
Yeah, because you figure you're talking about that's your last defense if you get a security breach. It's your, obviously business continuity. If you lose power and it's an extended power outage, there's so much that goes into having a good backup and disaster recovery plan. And it's too often that we see where we start working with somebody and we find out that even though they've been paying for backup, they haven't had a backup in an extended amount of time because they aren't seeing regular reports. So when we talk about a backup, what's the type of things that we should be looking? Is there a cookie cutter solution for backup, or is it by business? What types of things do you look for when you send your team out to do an assessment that, to go in and talk to a business about their backups?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I don't think there is a single backup solution that, fits perfect for every business. I think that is something that each business is going to have different levels of sensitivity to and different requirements. Not to mention, if you're falling under any kind of compliances, you have to take that in consideration as well. I think as simple as there's a couple things in the industry that we typically look for when we're looking at trying to categorize what is the best backup for a client. The first thing is the RPO, which is, and I hate acronyms, I can't believe I just said that, but the recovery point objective. And the other piece is the RTO, the recovery time objective. So the purpose of those two questions is, A, how many backups points do you need in a particular day? If your server goes down right now and you lost all of your data, what is the furthest point in time you can go back without your business feeling the impact?
So how much work could you have just lost?
Exactly. And, I think 2 hours is typically where we would recommend if somebody really doesn't know, that's a good starting point, where if you lost the last 2 hours, is that devastating or not? The other piece is, how long can you be down? So there's a certain element to any kind of disaster or failure that comes into play that you really have to consider the time. If your business is something where you can be down for a day, 2 days, 3 days, that really factors into your design, because you can get a little bit more flexibility on the type of solution that you're applying. You can simply do a backup of your files to a drive, and then in any scenario, we always would recommend an offsite backup, because in the event of something happens in your building, you need to be able to get back up on your feet somewhere else. But if your tolerance is, I just can't lose any data, I can't be down at all, then that's something that's an entirely different discussion. And you can achieve that, but it's going to be in the form of additional hardware that's in place, with the ability to, in the event of your primary servers or workloads going down, we can fail over and immediately spin it up on another piece of hardware until we get that other equipment up and running.
So you mentioned RPO, recovery point objective, RTO, recovery time objective. So your recovery point objective is that how much work can I have just lost? Your recovery time objective is how long is it going to take me to get back up and running if I have to go to that backup, correct?
Exactly.
So the third piece, I guess, that you have to take into consideration is the budget for the business as well. Because I know a lot of times what we'll hear is, well, I can't ever be down. I can't be down for more than an hour. And we'll go and we'll design a solution for that. We'll put together a proposal and put the pricing in front of somebody. And then it's all of a sudden, well, maybe I can be down for a day. Because obviously the higher you go, or I guess how you look at it, the lower you go in time for both of those, recovery time objective and recovery point objective, the higher the cost is, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just like anything, if you've bought a house ever, you can sit down with your realtor and talk about all of the great things you want, the open floor plan, the updated kitchen, finished basement, a 2-acre property in the middle of the city, until you look at the house and you realize that might be about 4 or 5 times what I was really thinking I was going to spend. And at the end of the day, you're going to adjust those expectations, and you should still end up somewhere, though, where you feel comfortable and you feel like the money you're spending is exactly meeting your expectations. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it's planning for the worst, right? I mean, everybody thinks, well, it's never going to happen to me. Everybody thinks, I'm never going to need that backup, so why should I pay the extra for it? But it's really planning for the worst case scenario. You got to plan that this, whatever disaster it is going to happen at the worst possible time when you're just getting ready to finish your year end, and you owe something to somebody, whatever it is, it's the worst possible scenario for your business that it's going to happen. And that's what you have to plan for when you talk about those things.
Absolutely. And, I think something else that's key too is, let's fast forward. You have a good backup solution in place. It's meeting all of your expectations in terms of the frequency, and you have a good recovery plan for when the event does happen that you need to rely on that backup. I think the other thing that's very critical is, if you're a business owner in particular, you should absolutely be receiving regular reports that show you that the backups are in fact happening, because there's a lot of things that can happen along the way and cause a backup to fail. We see it all the time. And it's something that you need to actually see that it's happening and have proof of it. And to further that along, I think it's important also to not just trust that report and not just trust the backup solution giving you the green check mark that it's all good. You absolutely have to do some test scenarios for a couple reasons. A, you need to make sure that the data that's being backed up is in fact valid. There's a lot of different backup solutions. They all operate differently, but in some of the events, there's what's called like a chain backup, where you get, on today, we would take a large full backup of all your data, and then every day forward for the next couple weeks, we're only going to make small backups of the data that changed day to day. If along the way, if that backup becomes corrupted at any point in time, then the delta changes, the incremental backups that are going forward, they could be broken as well. So you're getting successful backups, but the data is no good. And I think so that it's important to test that periodically. The other piece is you got to have a good plan in place for when in the event that you do need to rely on a backup and you're in a disaster recovery scenario, that you know what to do. Recently, we had a client that had an issue with water damage in their server room, and it completely took out their entire environment. And the work that we put in advance really helped them out, because we helped establish and document a detailed plan of, in the event of a disaster, this is all the steps you need to do. And I think it's important to have that in place, because when you do have something like that happen, you got enough things to deal with how are my users going to work remote? How I got to get the insurance involved and start making my claims, and where's our new location going to be? Whatever the case may be, the last thing that you want to be worrying about is how to go about accessing your data now. And that's something that I think is just a lot of planning up front, and you should be fully prepared in that event. So I think the regular test is absolutely important.
And that's where setting the expectation up front really comes into play, because what you don't want to happen is something happens like that. Somebody goes in to clean the server room and they hit the wrong spot, and all of a sudden your servers are all down. And then you find out, well, wait a minute, I thought we were going to be able to get back up and running in an hour, but I just found out it's going to take a day. So it's really setting those expectations ahead of time, making sure, again, that the budget meets the expectations. But ultimately what you want to be sure of is that when something goes wrong, you know exactly what you should expect. I should expect to be back up and running in a day, or I should expect to be back up and running in an hour. Whatever it is, the main thing is making sure that that solution meets that expectation, and then testing it on occasion, like you said, to make sure that it's going to meet that expectation.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's key. And, there, like we said, there's several different routes you can go with the backups. No backup is created the same, and no business has the same requirements. But, at the minimum, you should be backing up to a local repository at your business. And no matter the scenario, you should absolutely be backing up to the cloud. There's some cloud-only products out there that will take your data off-site, and it's guaranteed and replicated and such between data centers, and that's fine. But you should also be, again, that falls back to your recovery time. That type of scenario is going to take a little longer to get you back up and running. So I think, as long as you have a good plan in place, you do your homework up front, you understand totally what the expectations are, and it should be very easy to find a backup solution that meets that.
And we'll get into this further when we, I'm sure down the road on the podcast, we'll talk about cloud in particular. But one of the things that we hear about a bit, when we start talking about that, you should always have an on-premise backup, you should always have a cloud-based backup, is, what about the security of the cloud? People are concerned if their box isn't sitting in their office, that it's not as secure, right? So, maybe we can just briefly touch on, like I say, we'll talk about it more in a later one, but briefly talk about the security around the cloud. Is that a valid concern?
Yeah, I think security in any discussion point should absolutely be a concern. I don't think it should be something that concerns you into paralysis, though, where you're afraid to take it on. I think just having a little bit of education and understanding, potential risk, and more importantly, that it's all set up correctly, and it means that you can feel comfortable about it is the key. So when we're talking about backups in particular, all of the top products that we use, they're encrypting the data locally, and that data is securely transmitting to a cloud server that is also encrypted. And that encryption key, it's not even something that we know. It's a handshake that's going on from the local software or the appliance that's driving the backup and the cloud server where the destination is. So the data in transmit is encrypted. There's really no way to get a hold of that data as it is without understanding this encryption key. And at that point, it's a whole different discussion because it's not something that is just easily tapped into. Right. So the encryption keys constantly update. And really, I mean, our backups, we run our whole business off this. We have cloud-based backups. I really don't have concerns over that because I know that our data is encrypted during transmit. So for me, it makes complete sense to do that type of backup.
Yeah, and I know, what I always mention too when I'm talking to somebody is just the sheer amount of money that goes behind security, right? So, one of our cloud-based providers is Microsoft. The other main one is Datto. But if you look at Microsoft in particular right now, with their Azure backup, right? You've been to Microsoft. You've seen the entire office space there. It's dedicated to cybersecurity. They spend $1 billion with a B, $1 billion a year on security. Now, I don't know about what you would think, but I've yet to meet a small, medium-sized business that can afford to spend $1 billion a year on security. So that's the point that I always make is really when it comes down to it, there's not a small business, a medium-sized business, most large businesses that can afford to spend the kind of money that these cloud providers, whether it's Microsoft, Datto, Amazon, really any of them spend on security to make sure that the data that's in their environments is truly secure. Yeah,
absolutely. It's the truth, and you just have to find a good partner that you can trust and that you align with, and just understand the technology and the risk and limitations. But it's funny you should bring up security because Chuck here, he's a guy who enjoys the finer liquors in life, and he's got a nice bottle of Tomatin, is it?
Yep. I like my single malt scotches, and I've found that I specifically like my single malt scotches from the Highland area, I guess, of Scotland, which I just kind of happen to look at the scotches that I like, and they're Highland single malt scotches. So where are you going with this?
Slightly interesting, but what's more interesting to me is you still have an alarm device attached to the neck of this bottle. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here.
Well, see, there's kind of a couple ways you can get scotch. You can pay for it. So no, the way what happened with this particular scotch is we were doing an order and through Shipped, and we had a little bit of money left to spend before we could get free shipping. So I was asked if there was anything that I needed from Meyer, and I came up with the scotch, and it showed up at the office about 30 minutes later, which was pretty awesome. But it still had the security tag on it, which I kind of find funny because, as you'll see, I was able to remove the packaging and get the cork out without any problem, without affecting the security tag.
So you're saying Shipped stole this bottle then? You're
Yeah.
not taking the claim for it?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I appreciate it, though. Yeah.
Yeah, just another thing that makes me think is, just to kind of transition a bit here, we've talked about the tech stuff, and I think, everybody understands the backup situation here, but let's kind of, why don't you tell me a little bit? I know you just recently went to the Red Wings game downtown against the Capitals. We also started the year, we had a partner in town and went down and got a suite in the Raymond Club at LCA, caught a game there. Islanders were playing, Red Wings happened to be on the ice as well, skating around. Tell me a little bit about your recent, though. What's your thoughts?
Well, what I've learned is the right way to do a Red Wings game. So I've gone to a lot of Red Wings games, especially late 90s, early 2000s. My buddy and I would go down all the time. We do a lot of standing room tickets because those were the cheap tickets. But since I've learned the right way to do a game, and that was, we started with the preseason game. We went to the Raymond Club, which was pretty awesome. Our seats, I think we were 17th row, about center ice, but then there's a club that you walk through to get to the tickets or to get to the seats where it's unlimited food. You get beer and wine included, and it's good food too. So this last game I went to was against the Capitals, like you mentioned, and we were on the other side of the ice at the East Club. It was the Motor City Casino Club. Same thing though. It was unlimited food, and I had some steak. I had some sea scallops. And every corner was a different type of food. It was fantastic. And then we had good seats. Unfortunately, we got to watch them lose. I think it was 5-2 was the final. But
Seems to be the trend.
Yeah, being a longtime hockey fan, I have always been a huge fan of Alex Ovechkin. So it's kind of cool to be able to see him play. He got a hat trick that night, 2 goals that were empty netters. So I don't know if it really counts, but there were hats thrown on the ice, so I guess it does. But it was still a fun game. It's always a good time to go down to Detroit and spend some time down there.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's one of the things, too, for me is LCA, the food, the eatery in there is there's so many options. And I think these suites absolutely are the best bang for your buck because, when I think about going to an arena and getting a buffet, I'm thinking about, pigs in a blanket, hot dog, maybe hamburger,
right,
a couple toppings to choose from.
Not steak and sea scallops.
No, and the food is really good.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people on this, maybe you have, but I think I'm surprised that there's still a lot of people that haven't been downtown, in particular to see the arena. But also, I think, it's so thriving down there right now. To go down to a game, win or lose, you're having a good time. It's the whole experience of it. The city is just lit up at night. In the summertime, there's people all over the place. And, I went to school in Wayne State, 2003, and it's crazy to me how quick this city has really got things going, in particular the last 5 years. I think if you haven't, you got to get down there. You're really missing out if you haven't been down there in the last couple of years in particular.
So you'll have to give me a second here. You said the word thriving, and I'm trying to find a definition for that word. I'm not sure that it's a real word. I haven't been able to find it yet. I'm searching, I'm Googling, and I haven't been able to find thrivant.
Well, there might be a few of those that come through on this. Maybe I have my own language. Who knows? But
maybe
we'll see.
Yeah, I know you went with me. The first game that we went down, the preseason game, like you mentioned, we took a partner of ours, and you went with me, and we, at your suggestion, we went to the Caucus Club ahead of time. Great restaurant.
I think it's one of the better valued steakhouses, though.
I was gonna say it's a little bit pricey.
It's not Ponderosa, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest here, but it's not London Chop House either. So I think you get the best bang for your buck. You get a great steak. It's a very cool setting. I think I think I've been there 4 or 5 times, and almost every time there's live music. You know, they either a little jazz musician or at least a piano. So I kind of like that ambience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of frequent downtown Detroit a little bit more than I do. What other restaurants do you recommend down there?
Yeah, I think, I'll throw out 2 options out there. One I think is an old favorite. I would absolutely recommend you go to Green Dot Stables if you haven't been already. It's basically like a slider and a la carte type restaurant. It's basically like a saloon, but there's probably 25 options of sliders to come through. I mean, there's like peanut butter and raspberry jam to, a gyro. They have, if you got a sensitive diet, there's vegan options, there's, plenty of vegetarian, but it's a place where no matter who you are, you can go there, get 5 or 6 at least is what my recommendation would be. But it's awesome food. It's a real good experience there. But also I think, we've talked about LCA. So a restaurant that I would recommend if you're going downtown to a concert or a game, is one of my favorites to go to beforehand would be Bakersfield. It's just about a block north of the arena. It's like a tequila bar. And they do the artisan tacos. Their tacos are phenomenal. It's a great place. Their margaritas are just absolutely amazing. You have to get it. They have this pineapple one and mango one there. This is the way to go. They got some interesting twists on it, but very much like a Tex-Mex type place, but it's within walking distance to the arena. So that's the 2 options I'll throw out there for today. Yeah.
Nice. I know it's been a while since I've done this, but when I used to go down to Wings games, a lot of times what we would do is we'd park in Greektown, and we'd hit either Nicky's or Pizza Popolis. Love those places, especially if you like pizza. Nicky's is a great place, and obviously Pizza Popolis with the deep dish pizza. It's really good. So those are kind of the ones that I've got probably the most experience with. But even just the restaurants, just on the outside of LCA, it's one of the cool things about the arena there is. There's a bunch of restaurants just on the outside where you can walk in from the outside, you can eat, and then you can head into the game as well.
Absolutely.
So this podcast is going to be published January 6th. So we can talk about some of the events that are going to be happening then. I know one that I'm going to be sad to miss. January 12th at Motor City Casino. There's going to Johnny Lang's going to be playing. You probably have no idea who that is. Probably 80% of our listeners have no idea who that is, but
he's probably a bit before my time.
He's still active now. Don't call me old.
Well, I didn't say old, but
yeah, well, you did.
Yeah,
but no, he's a blues singer. He started when he's actually a year younger than me. Started when he was about 15, 16. That's about when I started listening to him. I've been a huge fan of his. I've always wanted to see him live. I saw that he was coming to Detroit, and I got super excited. And then I found out that's the day that I have to head out of town to go to Las Vegas for work. So I'm a little bit upset about that. But aside from that, there's definitely some sports going on that week as well. The Pistons are in town. The Wings are in town. What do you got to say about the Lions? I know you're a big football fan.
Well, yeah, by the time this drops, hopefully Lions are absolutely and comfortably settled into the number 2 overall pick. The season was a disaster. I just hope that they haven't done something by this point to go ahead and win a game. So, a previous season ticket holder, it's just, I've hit the point, I think to start this year was the first year I wiped off the blue Kool-Aid on my lips from the past 10 seasons. And it's getting really hard to be a fan of that team. I just, every step along the way, it seems like they're making a bad decision. So,
but wait a minute, it's going to be different next year.
Not from this guy. I can tell you that right now. I don't know.
It's the famous saying, though. It's
always going to be. It's always next year. I know. It's the same old Lions. What are you going to do? Yeah,
I don't know, but I appreciate everybody for listening, taking the time to join us for our inaugural episode. Well, this is going to be a weekly podcast, so we'll see you next week, and we'll talk some more tech, some more Detroit news, and some sports.
Yep, and don't forget to submit any kind of questions, feedback, any talking points you want. We're really hoping to get the viewers engaged here. Thank you.